Instagram got blocked by my stupid opal.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Hold on. I have to make sure my opal doesn't block it.
Hello. Hello, everybody. I am turning off my Focus app because we are still new at doing this on Monday mornings. And apparently at 9 a.m., I'm like, let's just not. So here we go. There we go. Going live. Going live. All the places. All right, we're now live on Instagram, on the Facebook, on the YouTube, all the places. And welcome to our Monday Live on making your coaching business work, making it thrive. I'm so pumped to have my dear friend, Kim Spencer, joining me as a very special guest today. And I'm going to bring her right up on the stage and then we're going to introduce her and it's going to be great. So here we go, adding you all the places. And there she is. Hello, gorgeous. So nice to see you.
Hi. It's like it's not yet loaded on my. Okay, there we are. Now we are loaded on my end as well as yours. Yay!
Oh,
Oh, it's so good to
yay.
see you. Let me make sure there's no
Okay.
feedback on my end. There we go.
Yeah, I
All
know,
right.
right? This is like the part of simulcasting they don't tell you. Oh my gosh, Kim, welcome. Welcome to the show, to the live, to the time with all the people. We're focused on making our coaching business really work. And okay, just a little by way of a little bit of introduction. Kim and I are very familiar because we happen to be business besties. And I'll never forget this statuesque, glittering gem of a woman strutting, and I do mean strutting, into the certified high performance coaching certification. I believe it was my first year. It might have been a renewal. Who cares? Nothing matters before that. Because when she walked in with all her sparkle glory and like hair down to her hips, I was like, who is this woman? And I really, really want to get to know her. And then, like, fast forward a few years, lived in different countries, had a bunch of babies, built a bunch of business. And over the last few years, Kim has really thrown herself into the podcasting space. And there's a whole backstory to that. I'll let her tell you about it. Here's what you need to know. Kim is as real as they come. I mean, I know she's definitely is sparkles and glamour and everything. That is her authentic, amazing expression, and it's so good. She even taught me how to curl my hair, y'all. Like, this woman is the best. Okay, so Ashley says hi. Nice to see
Hey,
you, Ashley. Okay, so Kim, take 30 seconds and catch us up on why are we talking about podcasting, guesting so much these days?
So I was stuck in Australia. We were those Americans who got stuck abroad during the pandemic, and it was 2020, and my husband's industry completely shut down. So it was entirely on me. We were living abroad with my with our 3-year-old, and I was like, "Oh, I've had a digital business since 2018. Not a problem. I can handle it." And then I was like, "Oh crap! My main source of lead generation literally just got COVID because I can't do live events." And that was when I remembered a $10,000 coaching contract that I had gotten from a podcast interview. I asked my team, I said, do we need to double down? Like, let's try doubling down on podcast guesting, because we'd had our own podcast for a year and it was great for retention and it was great for generating some leads, but really it was for nurturing those prospective clients who were in that in-between phase. They were interested, but they still want to learn more. And when we started guesting, that was when within 50 interviews, I generated over $70,000 of new business revenue. And then fast forward, it's now over $250,000 in new business revenue. And new business revenue, as you know, is a lot harder to generate than recurring business revenue. So I was like, I'm on to something. We ended up having a second child. And like any sane entrepreneur mother of two, I thought, well, second child, obviously second business. So
Clearly.
clearly.
Yes, obviously. That makes so much sense, actually, because, the urge to nest is like the urge to organize things. So if you were doing kind of some podcasty stuff on the side and it was like getting all entangled with
Yeah.
your coaching business, it makes perfect sense to me. It's just more organized to have
It
two.
is. Yeah, it's like having two separate rooms for each of your two separate kids. Like you give them you make each room their own. And that was the thing that we had to separate the businesses because my message with Crown Yourself, which is really about mindset and leadership and communication strategies, while Communication Queens touches on it, it's more Communication Queens is really about the we're just going to get you booked on the right podcast that'll build your brand awareness and your bottom line. Like with Crown Yourself, my message was getting muddled. And my
Mm.
social media manager, when I told her that we were going to break the two apart and like separate the conjoined twins, she was like, "Thank you," because they were so clearly two separate brands. And I was just on the Brad Weissman show, and he was like, "Your book cover looks so different than like your Crown Yourself brand." And I said, "Yes, and that's the point, because Crown Yourself, it's got a very regal feel. It's got like, I will definitely call you out, but it's more about calling your mindset out, calling your decision strategies out. On Communication, one of our queens, our value is like out loud and proud." And I once had a prospective client come to me who was a very buttoned up businessman. He was very, very well known in his industry as a speaker. And he was like, "Are you going to make me pink?" I said,
Oh my God. I love it.
I said, "No." I said, "That's my brand." I said, "Our job is to honor your brand. And if you want to have your button down, Brooks Brothers suit, we will honor that. We will give you the nice basic navies and blacks and like slight tints of red in your one sheet, and make sure that your brand reflects accurately who you are,
Oh
not
my
who
gosh.
we are."
I love this. As I was getting ready for this podcast, I went, "Oh my God, I need to have a shower." And what that has to do with the branding thing is that I literally had the thought, I'm like, I really am the get up and do it coach. Like my hair is literally wet, you guys. And I think that for a long time I was really trying to figure out who I was and who I wanted to express as a coach. And so just this morning with like the whole branding piece of things, it's like, well, the red lips and the red glasses made it. The hair didn't, but never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think like just showing up fully and authentically as who you are is absolutely essential to success as a coach. And I think one of the reasons I was very excited, apart from the fact we're besties, to have you here on the show is because you're very successful as a coach as well. And most of my audience are aspiring coaches, or they have kind of gotten started in fits and starts, but they are drowning in overwhelm. Or maybe they're like me and they present with a touch of the ADHD. And, we kind of, yeah, hi. And so I think it's so exciting what you've learned and what you're doing with your podcast agency, and also you've applied so many of those things for your own coaching business. Can you walk us through actually some of maybe your top 5 do's and don'ts of using podcasting as a coach? Like,
Mhm.
because I know I've had some kind of icky experiences around podcasting that, we later talked about it and you were like, oh, that should never have happened. So I would just love to hear your 2 cents on, if I'm a bodacious, amazing coach who has a desire to have all this impact and, hey, some income too, what should I keep in mind when it comes to podcasting and podcast guesting?
So definitely number one is 90% of podcasts are not going to be worth your time as a
Ooh.
business owner, just as a business owner. Because 90% of podcasts, like there's 6 million podcasts out there on Apple and Spotify combined, and 90% are not producing episodes regularly. And so sometimes, I know you as well as I have like eliminated the 15-minute coffee chats from our coaching business, because we just are like, we've been in the game for almost a decade and there's no need for brain picking. Like I have 9 years of content for you to pick my brain. So podcast guesting can sometimes be hidden by the veil of being a pick your brain session where the episode is never distributed.
Ooh,
And
yuck.
yeah, so
Yes.
that's one thing that you want to look out for as a coach and as a business owner, is making sure, has this podcast distributed an episode in the past 90 days. It's like bare minimum. And we have a 5-30-90 rule. I share about it in the book. And this is our basic rule. And this is make sure the podcast has 5 reviews, because reviews, if you look at typical marketing conversion ratios, that's the amount that you only get like 1 to 10% to actually take that action on clicking through. And, you may get 20 to 40% opens on your email, and that's like your podcast downloads, but you tell somebody to write a review, that's that extra like 1 to 3% click-through rate. And so we've found that even though podcasts are a little shy of sharing their numbers, like their download numbers before, if you just multiply the number of reviews they have by 10, that's about the amount of downloads they're getting per episode. And so 50 downloads, 30 to 50 downloads per episode, that's a good size workshop that you are hosting, coinciding with a podcaster, especially if they're aligned with your business, with your avatar, with your angle of your story and your brand. And so we want to look at at least 5 reviews, at least 30 episodes, because that automatically puts them in the top 95% of podcasts, because 90% of podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes. And 90% of podcasts also don't produce every 90 days.
I'm doing like a little fist pump in the air, because I'm like, yes, I'm in the top 10% just because I've been doing this for a minute. And so I love this. So, the distinction, goodness, there's so many things I want to unpack in what you just said. Talk to us a little bit about the distinction between hosting a podcast, right? Because to fight for that top 10%, that may or may not be a battle that a coach wants to take on. I think that I had ignorance on fire about a lot of marketing. And the thing is I've done like so much of it for like 5+ years for each of these strategies that it's like, do we really want to stop, or do we just want to like optimize and get better? So that's kind of where I'm at with hosting a podcast. But let's just fast forward. It's 2024 right now. Like, should a coach start a podcast? Should they stick to guesting? Like, what's your opinion there?
It depends on where you are in your business, right? So if you are in just like in a relationship, when it's on the rocks, when you are struggling with communication, when you are having those difficult, like it's not quite working, the last thing you want to have is a baby together. And that's kind of like, that's your relationship with your business. So if your business relationship is on the rocks and you're not quite bringing in sales and your cash flow is struggling, starting a podcast is like having a business baby project that you're going to be working on. You don't need another project. You need a process to get you new leads and traffic. And so guesting is what I normally recommend for those starting out, so that you also get your feet wet with your message. I mean, my first guesting spot was in 2016, I was still marketing. I was barely marketing my coaching business. I just come out with a co-author bestseller called The Start. And then I still had my brick and mortar Pilates studio back then. And so I didn't quite know what my message was. And the great thing about podcast guesting, especially like this wasn't for a podcast that had a small audience. It's actually for one, it's like a top 1% podcast now. It's like, it's blown up, but they've been in the game for 9 years. But I was one of their earlier episodes, and I still was figuring out my message. And back then I was still talking about, alignment with your body and really being able to have like body love and wellness. I wasn't sure on what I was coaching yet. I wasn't yet a high performance coach. Like I didn't have that clarity. And so podcast guesting actually allowed me to have that clarity on what messages were resonating, because I would have direct feedback from the podcaster, which was really helpful. Now, I will say hosting can be a wonderful way to attract mentors. And like I said, like distribute the episode, like just don't have it be a pick your brain session. But hosting can be a wonderful way to attract mentors, because I can ask to pick somebody's brain, and maybe they might give me 5 minutes. But if I invite them onto my podcast with an audience of 100,000 downloads, like they're going to be much more inclined to share their message, their tips, their tricks, their best practices with me, simply because I have an audience and I'm providing a value for them. Simultaneously, it can also be great as a coach, as a strategy that you build into your business, so long as you don't make it awkward. Like it's you can have your podcast be a lead generation strategy if you don't treat the podcast interview like your main source of lead generation strategy. So what I mean is when you invite a guest on, you're not immediately upselling them into your coaching program, or worse, using manipulative tactics like, oh, I just heard this and this and this in your interview. I think you could really benefit from my
I've
relationship
had that
coaching.
happen.
Or
Yeah, that is like the grossest, is like you're
it's
burying
so
your
gross.
soul and then, for the purpose, for one stated purpose, and then they just like immediately flip it into a sales convo. And like, it's not that I would never hire a coach who has a podcast, far from. It's more like there's a way to have that conversation, and that's not the way to do it.
Yeah. And I've had like my last coach I hired because I was on their podcast. And I loved it because their process was so streamlined and it was very intuitive, and they asked really insightful questions on the podcast where I was like, "Oh, I hadn't thought about it that way." And I pay coaches for perspective shifts. And
Mm,
like that's the key is that you're looking for when you work with the coaches, you want to have perspective shifts. You want to have growth and expansion. And so when I started getting perspective shifts on the interview, when we started having, they invited me, they're like, would you like to have a follow-up conversation? I was like, yeah, you know what, I would. And they're like, no pressure, no hard sales, I promise. And I said, okay, cool. And then I went on the follow-up conversation, no pressure, no hard sales. It was just, okay, this is where you're going through, this is where you want to get to, and here's our process, and kind of, let's work and see if this is like a right fit for both of us. It wasn't this like, I need sales. And I think that that's where most coaches get it wrong, is when they approach a podcast from that neediness, that energy of neediness, and I need sales, and they turn it into like the sales conversation before the person's ready. And I always think of podcasting, whether you're guesting or hosting, like dating. It's a first
yes.
date.
Yes. Yeah,
Like,
exactly. It's like, hey, we just had coffee, man. Like, I'm not sure if we're ready to get married, like,
yeah,
or move in together,
yeah,
you know?
it's exactly. I mean, sometimes there may be that person. I mean, I was that way with my husband. Like, it was very fast, but it was all right and aligned, versus it was like someone trying to have it be fast for the sake of they just wanted to get married, right? So
Yeah.
it's the same way with sales. It's like if you make it this like neediness of I need you and I need the sale and I need this, it's a gross energy. So I always say approach any podcast interview, whether you're hosting or guesting, like a demonstration. Let it be the best demonstration of who you are, of your services, of your brand, of your business, of what you stand for. Let your work speak for itself. A great way to do this is by embedding testimonials and client metaphors into your interview to be able to share how it works for others.
I really love this that tip, especially about like weaving in examples. I've been teaching marketing for goodness, so like 6
Long time.
years, long time. And I think one of the things that I notice on social media and in podcast interviews and just sort of in general is this like rigidity that people can bring into their conversation. And I'm not saying you got to show up with wet hair, right? Like you can you can blow dry your hair, it's fine, it's allowed. What I'm saying though is that my favorite podcast that I listen to, and I'm thinking about like these world-class podcasts like Modern Wisdom, and et cetera. I've been binge listening to that one.
Oh, it's a
Um,
good one.
it's so good, right? But I think that what makes it so good is it is kind of a relaxed conversational vibe, and they are talking about really relevant topics for the audience, but it does come across a bit like coffee, like a very sophisticated
Mm-hmm.
coffee. Do you have any other tips for helping a coach, I guess, like loosen up but still like have a tight message? You know what I'm saying? Does that track?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like just breathe. it's
Breathing. Oh,
it's this
fascinating.
weird thing. I know it's this crazy thing, but most like my first business was at 19 years old teaching Pilates. And one of the things that I learned from that business and teaching it for 13 years was the fact that most people are breathing from the top 1/3 of their lungs. So they're super stressed and their breathing stays in their shoulders, which means you're not actually getting your breath into your body. And
Mm,
which means like if we're going to go metaphorical, you're not actually getting your breath into your heart or into your gut.
mm,
And like
Mm.
those areas, when you speak from the heart, like we've heard it said, speak from the heart, right? But it's like, how? Like, breath can bring that through because there's a level of resonance that happens when it's resonating inside the body. So take a few deep breaths. I had a client in entertainment industry for my coaching business, very high level client. And I gave him the exercise of just simple 90 seconds of parasympathetic breathing, meaning you inhale and then you exhale longer than you inhale. So you inhale for a count, exhale for a count of 8. And
Mm.
just that alone for 90 seconds puts you into a parasympathetic state with your nervous system. So you're calm. Because when you're thinking about need, when you're thinking about, oh, how am I going to leverage this? When you're thinking about all those things and all the tactics, you're stuck in your head. And like every professional athlete knows, when you're in your head, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want to be in the space of being in your body and trusting that body and trusting that message. So breath is one. And then the second one is when you are in that space of focusing on your message, on how you come across, on if people are going to buy from your business, all those fears are all about you. They're all about your
So
own
good.
ego.
So good. Such good reminders. I love it. What's the third one? You gave me two. I can't live with two. I need a third one.
Be of service, like shift it from
Mm.
ego, which is selfish, to being of service, and really ask my time limit.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll come back. I lost your audio on the Instagram.
You lost my, okay, hold on. Try again.
Oh, there you go. You're good.
There I am. Yeah, it was my own timer for productivity and focus. Um,
That's how we start is how we continue, isn't it? That's so funny.
so being of service, and what I mean by being of service is taking it to that next level. So one of the questions that I tell all that's in my book, Make Every Podcast Want You, I tell all of my clients to ask this before every interview. Just ask the host, who is your audience?
Oh,
Where
that's
are they
so
in their life and
good.
business?
Yes.
Because I know if I'm going on speaking about leadership principles, if I'm talking to an audience of high level CEOs who have 50 employees plus, that's going to be very different advice than I give to the solopreneur who's just starting their business. That's going to be very different strategies, tactics, stories, even because they won't resonate with the stories at those higher levels. I mean, they'll think, oh, it's nice to be there, but that's not where I'm at. That's not where my pain problem is. So be of service to the current audience's pain. And the greatest way to ask that is to understand where the host is. Where are you at with your business? Like, where are you at? And it's not to ask to sell them anything. It's to ask them to have them to understand how to serve their audience and to serve the host, because the host is the number one listener and the host is the greatest reflection of who their audience is.
Yeah, and they also have the editing scissors too, right? So
That
like,
too.
they're gonna be looking for certain things, and I really love this. Now I just wanted to say, like, we are here live and we've got several people watching live, so if anybody has a question for Kim, make sure you're on the Instagram and go to the little question bubble in the bottom of the live feed and you can ask anything. We're here live, so you can ask anything. And if you're brave and you'd like to come up onto camera, we could even do a little bit of laser coaching for a minute or two. So go ahead and post those questions. Anything about
Yeah,
podcasting, building a coaching business, you name it. All right, so let's keep going on this whole idea. So Kim, thank you so much for the advanced copy of your
you're
book.
welcome.
It's my feedback to her was that it is a masterclass in marketing. And it's with the angle of using podcasts. And you talk in the book about being a great host. You mainly focus on guesting, and you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
that's particularly good. One of the things I really loved from this very interview was when you said you need a process, not a project. So, can you unpack for us, like, let's say that we committed to the podcast guesting strategy and we're looking for stages. Obviously, get her book. It's coming out on September 30th with all the details. But if you were to give us a very high level, what is that process that we don't just kind of do this as a one off project and then we may or may not be disappointed with the result of that one and then take it from there?
So I know that you and I are like process queens and we love a good process. Um, and I outlined this in the book as far as like what the process looks like. And I come from Hollywood, and that was my dream, and that's why I started my first business as a Pilates instructor, was to support myself in that dream. And when I got that dream produced and distributed, and Lionsgate picked it up and everything, that was the moment where I was like, oh my gosh, there's got to be more. But I took that same process and I applied it to my business. And what that process is when you're in Hollywood and you have a movie, right? You have an in development stage where you're developing the relationships, you're developing who's going to be a part of the project. Then you have pre-production where you're planning and you're in that planning stage. Then you have production where you're recording, you're doing the thing. Then you have post production, and then you have distribution. And that's the whole arc of the podcasting process, whether you're hosting or guesting. Because if
Interesting.
you're guesting in development, you're developing the relationships. So we don't use our project management dashboard for this. We just use a spreadsheet to track all the podcasts that we're submitting, either me to or our clients to. And then we just are able to track where they are in the development phase of building that relationship. Then once we get them into scheduling, that's the pre-production phase. So that's once we're scheduling, we're figuring out time zones, booking. Some podcasts, they will want like an advertising sponsorship. Sometimes podcasts will want you to fly there and do a live interview. So that's the pre-production phase. Then you have the recording, which is the production phase, and then you have post-production. Fortunately, post-production, if you're a guest, there's not much that you have to do except promote the episode. Like, most people get stuck, and I've seen this specifically with coaches. They think, "Oh, I'm not making any money because the episode hasn't distributed. I haven't generated any leads. I haven't generated any referrals because the podcast episode hasn't distributed yet." And I say that is absolute and total BS, because we have time and time again, we have, for every single one of our for every single one of our agency clients, we have an Airbnb Uber style review system. And we track our clients generating business before the podcast interview even distributes. And we track, are they getting referrals? Are they getting clients? Was any further business discussed, period? Like, in general, being able to track that, suddenly you're able to see, okay, yeah, there's referrals. And how you do that in the post-production phase, how are you up leveling that relationship? So
I
it's
think that's
all
the
about the
key.
relationship.
It's totally the key, right? Like, for the pot, I just recently started inviting guests onto my podcast more proactively with a
I
process
know.
instead of treating it like a dang project. And the first thing I literally did was I set up a pipeline system in my customer relationship management database. And I segment out my podcast guests, but it's very similar approach to
Mm-hmm.
it, because as far as I'm concerned, it is a relationship. Like, are we building a relationship here? And how can we both service that relationship, like bring service
Yeah.
to that relationship, right?
And a few quick tips to do this that not only position you as the go-giver, or as a person who's bringing generosity and reciprocity to a relationship and who isn't just a taker, is as soon as you get off the podcast interview, like, take a screenshot, showcase that on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, your platform of choice, and be like, hey, I was just on this podcast. Because that automatically positions everyone else in your audience of going, oh, she's an authority. Like, oh, she's going on podcasts. And other podcasters may be in the audience. They may say, oh, I didn't know you did interviews. I would love to have you on. So start showcasing it. Drop the podcaster a LinkedIn review or a testimonial, and say, hey, thanks. Here, I wanted to give you this testimonial. You did such a great job interviewing. Because you never know. Podcasters, sometimes they want to be MCs at events. They want more speaking gigs as well. Like, everybody has their own dreams that they're going after. So be the person who enhances that relationship and gives generously. And then tag them multiple times. Like, between the time that your episode is recorded and the episode is distributed, sometimes can be months. So keep the podcaster on a list of your social media favorites that you visit once or twice a week, and just interact with them on their own social content, and if somebody's like, oh, I'm really interested in this episode, and say, yeah, I was honored to be a guest on it. Drop them a review. These are all little ways that just let the other person know that you're thinking about them, that you care. Like,
So
podcasters put
good.
so much hard work into producing an episode. Like, the problem I see with most guests, and the big harp that I get from most podcasters, is they don't hear anything from the podcast guest after they go on their show. I was talking to one podcaster, and she was like, yeah, I had someone actually say in the application that they would not promote the episode. And I was like, well, they're obviously rejected.
I have that question too, like just double checking, right? And I don't care if you have an email list of 2 people at this stage,
Yeah.
right? Like, and different podcasters are going to have different thresholds for how much they care, but I think like a good standard, a good minimum standard is you're going to make a post on that social media. If you have an email list, you're going to push, at least one email out talking about that experience and really aiming to add value. Okay, we've got 2 questions that have come in. Angela, you said you were willing to come on live. If you could smash the little camera with the plus sign at the bottom, then you can request to join and we can address your question live. The other question was, I have a question for Kimmy. How can I focus on my work when I'm feeling sad or I'm having relationships problems that's just taking up all the brain space? And I love this question because I think sometimes, especially when we're building a business, we build this huge wanna-do list. It's not a to-do list, it's a wanna-do list. And that wanna-do list is like this drowning in things I should do, things I could do, and you're just choking on it. So what's
Mm-hmm.
your top advice for somebody who is, not feeling like they're accessing the brain space necessary to really push their business goals forward, including podcast guesting?
So, on the one hand, the beautiful thing with podcast guesting is you can have your boundaries around what you will talk about and what you won't talk about. And I highly recommend that if there's anything that you're dealing with personally, that's not necessary. That save that for a therapist's office, relationship coach, like get the support that you need in that area. And you can be guided to answer the podcaster's questions. And sometimes those prompts can allow you to think about your business in a new way. So
Mm.
it's not, and that can be a really big blessing. On the flip side, back in 2021, and Amanda knows this because she was with me throughout the whole ordeal, I lost 3 family members, had a baby, scaled my business 150%, my coaching business 150%. And one of those family members included my dad. And so it was a very intense emotional year. And I share about this experience in the book because I made a very clear and specific rule that after a death, a marriage, a move, a giving birth to a child, like some major upheaval, life event, a divorce, just put podcast guesting on the back burner for 3 weeks. Like, put it on the back burner. They will be there in 3 weeks. You can always say, hey, I'm dealing with some personal challenges right now. I'd love to circle back with this in 2 months, or in a month to 2 months. They'll be there. They'll still be there. If they're a quality podcaster, they will still keep going. And if they really enjoy your content and want to have you on and want to have your advice and want to have your message shared with their audience, they value you.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll be there. Allow yourself to take this time and space to do what you need to do to also heal. I also am of there's a duality in my answer, and I completely understand and hear the paradox, because on the one hand, you can use podcast guesting to help give you a little bit more clarity as to the brand, while focusing the relationship challenges on one side. But on the other hand, if they really are serious relationship challenges, sometimes I completely understand how that may take a priority in your life at this moment, and that's okay too.
That's so good. Spoken like a great coach. I love it. Thinking about boundaries, Kim, do you have a few more minutes? Or are you good?
Yeah,
You're
yeah, we're
good.
good.
Okay, awesome. Well, I see that we have Angela. I'm gonna accept her invitation to join us on the stage. She's a new coach and new-ish coach, and she wants to work with busy, stressed career executives, and she wants to guest on other podcasts. So, what are the first steps to get started? And hello, Angela. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, why don't you take, 30 seconds and catch us up on what you already have going with your marketing so that Kim can help you the best?
Okay, awesome. So, Kim, I'm in the mastermind world, which is where I met Amanda, Tony, and Dean Graciosi. And I love talking to busy, stressed career executives, particularly the women. That was me. I lost four dear people. I've been on a couple podcasts. It's always excellent feedback. I have my own beta coaching and a website, and I'm working with Mastermind to get that set up. But I really have a passion to help other busy, stressed career women to make time for fun and joy without guilt. And I don't feel like the window to reach some people is super long because, in my case, two of my good friends who fit that category, they died pretty much never traveled together. So, when you said it helps you to get more traction, that's what attracted my attention. When I was in the I've done a quick, let me look decent.
I know what
You
you
look
mean.
great. You look gorgeous, Queen. So I'm just taking some notes. So you said busy, stressed career women. Um,
And then
and
I thought of sexist, but women are who I want to speak to probably the most. Men are who I've worked with, and they're the ones who right now are reaching out. Can you coach me? So I'm not going to exclude them, but the women I find, we're moms, we are kids of parents, sometimes we're grandparents, and we're busy career executives. No one really says too often, hey,
hold on. Hold on. I lost your sound.
Mm,
now I don't.
Okay.
That's what I was doing consciously.
that's
And so
that's awesome. So Kim, what do you think about this?
So a couple of things. So I've always had like my companies are called Crown Yourself and Communication Queens. They very much mark on the marketing and branding side, look forward facing toward women, but I mean, I would say actually in our Communication Queens agency, 60% of our clients are men right now. So I don't think you need to specifically speak to women or men if you're, especially if you're seeing men being attracted to your work. I'm seeing a lot in the coaching industry, more men actually looking for that female sort of guidance because that hard, masculine, push style of coaching has not really been as supportive as they need for their holistic picture of their life. Um, so looking at busy stress, can you tell me a little bit more about your ideal customer avatar? You said parents, career women, and men. Who are the people, like if you were to just describe the people who are currently in your beta testing group right now?
they are between the ages of 50 really and 60. Some of them are 45. And they are at the top of their game. They're high achievers. They're in charge of large organizations. They're busting it and getting it done. They're type A. They're either conservative Democrats or Reagan type of Republicans. They are used to traveling around the world and they're used to being it. But underneath, there's a question after COVID of, well, there is
Yeah.
anything I wanted to do that I haven't done, but because they're the boss, they don't want to look vulnerable in public. Like the question won't go away. And so when we're in those sessions, sometimes they're tears, sometimes they're big breakthroughs, sometimes they're moves to other countries. It's happening, but I'm like, who else needs to be? Who else is like I was in 2019? That is one step from a heart attack, one step from maybe their marriage not doing so good because they're never home, one step from have I been to any of my kids' games, right? That's, externally, you say she's got it going on, but inside, where it matters most, they're not feeling so connected to the things that really give them.
What is the problem that they come to you thinking that they have? Because one of the things that I explain about in the book is like there's a difference between the problems that we help them solve and then the problems that they come to us thinking that they have. What is the main problem they think they have?
They come to me saying, I wish I could take a vacation. I feel guilty. I wish I could take Saturday off, but I feel guilty. So they feel guilty and they don't do it, or they don't sometimes unconsciously feel worthy. So they'll say, I can't really put that money on myself. I got my kids in college. So I think what they need is an affirmation of their worth and a community where they realize I'm not alone. There are a whole bunch of other people who are doing and thinking as I used to do it, but now we're all
I love
changing.
it.
Would you say that they're workaholics?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. They go to work at 2:30 in the morning, 4:30 they stay. They have an 8:30 meeting. Maybe they get a Snickers bar for lunch, and then they get back home around 10 at night. They get a couple hours sleep, and then they do it again. Or they're in the Secret Service, and their schedule is nuts, but they're protecting the country. Or they're a lawyer, and they have all these clients. Or they're psychologists, and they're great. But underneath, after they give all this advice, their lives are not really that good.
So I would say a couple things. One of the things is you gave several keywords, and this can be a great place to start for looking at what podcasts are a right fit, is just looking at the keywords that you use to describe your ideal customer avatar. High achiever, type A, guilt, self-worth.
Take a break. Burnout.
Take a break. Like the burnout podcast would be huge. Like the workaholics, and then the message that you then curate on the podcast is, is something tailored to or around the guilt of vacation. The guilt of vacation hours.
Good. I would
So
tune into that.
Yeah. And because that's something that automatically it triggers them, because when you look at what is the unconscious mistake that your ideal customer avatar is making, one is that they're not taking time for themselves. They're not taking care of themselves. They're focusing on their employees. They're focusing on their team. They're focusing on the people that they have to serve in their industry, and that they're forgetting about the person who's actually doing the service. So the message, like guilt of it, like especially since you said specifically they feel guilty about taking a vacation, that's one that is a message that then clearly resonates as an unconscious mistake for the person who you're describing. And when you can talk to the unconscious mistake that your ideal customer is making, that they don't know that they're making, they think, oh, I'm doing all these things right because I'm working my butt off. I'm waking up at 2:30. I'm, crushing it. I'm just hustling. Like they think that they're doing what they should be doing. And you bring this mistake, and then you highlight in your talk, in your interview. You can even present to the podcaster, because sometimes podcasters will say, like, what are your favorite questions to be asked? This is a great one to then steer as to like why vacations are actually really beneficial to your business, to the growth of your career, to being able to better lead your team, because you get to see how autonomous your team actually is, and if they're able to handle and self-manage. So you're able to have these points that you can communicate inside the talk based on that space. And the other thing that I would say is, what is your typical call to action on a podcast?
I haven't had that, so that's a brilliant question. Because I don't want to be salesy, right?
Can I jump in here? All right, I'm going to give you an example. So, I've been talking in my social media about stop coaching for free. Stop coaching for free, because it devalues how a coach feels about themselves as they do it. They feel like it's a waste of time. They're frustrated. They get super salesy. Stop coaching for free. And, we're not really talking about this right now, but if you slide into my DMs and you say the word coffee, I'll send you an SOP for how I do coffee chats where people don't meet with me for free, but it only costs them a cup of coffee. You see how I did that? So, like, a good call to action that I've been using lately that works just amazing for real relationship building is just invite people to follow you on your Instagram and send you a keyword in the DMs, and then you can use any kind of a lead magnet that would genuinely help them achieve that. Yeah.
And the second one is always discovery call, because the podcast medium is an auditory medium, and that there is already a level, especially if inside the podcast interview you demonstrate all the things that you would on a typical discovery call. That discovery call is actually, it's not a coaching for free call, it's a sales call. And it's like, and so basically what I would say is, if this podcast resonated with you and you would love to learn how to have a guilt-free vacation, then just click the link down below and book. I would love to chat with you one-on-one and explore how we can get you to having a dream vacation, and so that you're supporting your team and so that your kids are still going through college. So
That's so good. Yeah.
Say thank you because I was on Dr. Anna Cabela's podcast. She's a girlfriend doctor, and she meets all the criteria for a good podcast, right? And I'm getting people approaching me, and I'm like, okay, now what do I do? So it came out on the 20th, so this is super timely. Even my husband said, oh, honey, that was really good.
I love it. I love it.
yes, I
That's so
love it.
good. Congratulations. Way to take amazing action and do what matters. Well, and thank you so much for joining us up here on the stage. And Angela, I'm gonna say goodbye for now, but thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon.
Absolutely. You'll take me off with the thing, right? I don't know how to do that.
I don't know how to do that.
We'll figure out how.
We'll figure it.
Got my camera. Maybe that'll do it. I'll take my mic off.
There you go. Okay, cool. Let's see if that works. I don't know. Kim, I don't know if you know how this works, but
I know how it works if I'm doing it, but it's one of those things that I like.
you're
I have not yet mastered teaching. So I've mastered the step of me doing it, but not
if
of doing it.
anybody in the comments wants to help with this, I would be forever grateful. Um,
Oh,
um,
okay. I think what you do, you go up to the where it says make every podcast want you hit the down
oh, there we
arrow.
go. Okay, bye,
Yeah.
Angela.
Bye.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, that was awesome. Thank you for the teamwork to make the dream work. Kim, thinking about connecting, like what's the best way for people to follow you? Do you have anything for our audience? Like, take it away.
Yeah, if you love this episode and you would like the masterclass that I taught for Amanda's mastermind on how to get coaching clients from podcast interviews, then hit me up in the DMs. Just say coaching in the DMs on Instagram at Kimberly.Spencer, and I will send you that masterclass for free.
Oh my God, that is so awesome. Thank you so much. And, everybody follow Kim. She's an absolute gem. She's just as consistent as they come. I really just appreciate you. I love you, friend. Thank you for being here. And yeah, we'll see you all next week on the Monday. And until then, keep crushing it. Keep doing what matters. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
All right. Just
All right.
finishing.